Most men think a hug is nothing. A quick greeting, a polite goodbye, a simple moment that doesn't really mean much. They go in, hug quickly, pull away, and move on without giving it a second thought. But what most men don't realize is that a hug is one of the most revealing moments in any interaction with a woman. Because in that short moment of physical contact, her body is telling you exactly how she feels. Her comfort, her interest, her level of connection with you, and sometimes even her attraction. The problem is not that women don't show these signals. The problem is that most men have no idea how to read them, so they miss it. They hug awkwardly, they pull away too fast, or they hesitate because they don't know what the moment means. And without realizing it, they send the wrong message back. They signal nervousness, they signal uncertainty, and in some cases, they even signal disinterest when that's not what they actually feel. This is where everything starts to go wrong. Because attraction doesn't just depend on what she shows. It also depends on how you respond. And if your response doesn't match the moment, you break the connection without even noticing it. In this video, I'm going to break down 4 different types of hugs that women give and explain exactly what each one means. Not just the obvious surface meaning, but what's actually happening underneath. You'll understand how to recognize the difference between a friendly hug, a comfortable hug, and the kinds of hugs that signal something deeper. More importantly, you'll learn how to respond in a way that keeps the moment natural instead of awkward. Because once you understand this, you stop guessing, you stop overthinking, and you start seeing things that most men completely miss. And after this, you'll never look at a hug the same way again. Before we break down the different types of hugs, you need to understand why this even matters in the first place, because on the surface, a hug feels simple. But in reality, it's one of the most honest forms of communication between two people. The reason is straightforward. People can control what they say, but they don't control their body language as easily. Words can be filtered, adjusted, or even completely changed depending on the situation. But physical reactions, especially in close moments like a hug, are much harder to fake. That's why a hug reveals more than conversation ever will. The length of the hug, the way she places her arms, how close her body gets to yours, whether she pulls away quickly or stays for a moment longer, all of these details communicate real emotion. These are not random behaviors. They are responses that come from how she actually feels in that moment. Research in human behavior shows that nonverbal communication carries a large part of emotional expression, especially in close interactions. That means while you might be listening to what she says, her body is already giving you a clearer answer. And this is where most men miss it. They focus on words. They wait for direct signals. They look for something obvious that confirms interest. But attraction rarely shows up that way. It shows up in small physical details that happen naturally when someone feels comfortable, connected, or interested. A hug is one of those moments. Because it removes distance, it puts both of you in the same space, with no room to hide behind conversation or distractions. In that moment, her body reacts based on how she feels, not what she chooses to say. That's why learning to read hugs gives you an advantage. You're no longer guessing, you're observing something real. And once you understand what to look for, you'll start noticing patterns that most men completely overlook. Because a hug is never just a hug, it's a signal. And the only question is whether you know how to read it. Now that you understand why hugs matter, the next thing you need to see clearly is where most men go wrong. And it's not complicated. Most men simply don't know how to respond in the moment. They either rush it, hesitate, or overthink it completely. Some men go into a hug with uncertainty. Their body feels stiff, their movements are not natural, and they pull away quickly because they don't know how long to stay. Others do the opposite. They hold too long without reading the situation, which can make the moment feel uncomfortable instead of natural. Both reactions come from the same problem: lack of awareness. When you don't understand what the hug means, you don't know how to match it. And when your response doesn't match her energy, the interaction becomes slightly off. This is something most men don't notice, but women do. Because for her, the hug is not just a greeting. It's a moment of connection. And in that moment, she is paying attention to how you respond. Are you relaxed? Are you comfortable? Do you match her energy, or do you break it? Your response answers those questions immediately. If you pull away too fast, it can signal nervousness or lack of confidence. If you hesitate or freeze, it can create awkwardness. And if you overdo it without reading her cues, it can feel forced. None of these reactions build attraction, they disrupt it. Another mistake men make is trying to interpret the hug without understanding context. They assume every hug means the same thing, when in reality, each type of hug communicates something different. Without that understanding, they either ignore the signal or misread it completely. That's why this matters. Because once you understand the meaning behind each type of hug, your response becomes natural. You don't have to guess. You don't have to overthink. You simply match the moment. And when you match the moment, everything feels smoother, more natural, more aligned. So now that you understand the mistake, let's break down the first type of hug you'll experience and what it actually means. The first type of hug you need to recognize is the most common one, and also the most misunderstood. It's the friendly pat hug. This is the hug that usually lasts 1 or 2 seconds. Her body leans slightly forward. There is very little full body contact, and you'll often feel a couple of quick pats on your back before she pulls away. Everything about this hug feels light, easy, and polite. And because of that, many men immediately assume one thing: she's not interested. But that assumption is where they get it wrong. A friendly pat hug does not mean rejection. It simply means that at this moment, she sees you as someone safe, comfortable, and easy to be around. There is no tension, no pressure, and no emotional intensity in that interaction. And that's actually a good thing. Because attraction doesn't always start with intensity. In many cases, it starts with comfort. When a woman feels relaxed around you, it creates a foundation that can grow into something more over time. The mistake most men make here is reacting negatively to this type of hug. They either pull away too quickly, become slightly distant afterward, or assume there is no potential and stop investing in the interaction. That reaction kills any chance of progression, because instead of building on the comfort that already exists, they shut it down. What you need to understand is that this hug is not the final result. It's the starting point. It tells you that she is open to being around you, that she feels at ease, and that there is space for the interaction to grow. But for that to happen, you need to handle the moment correctly. This is not the time to force anything. It's the time to build. And how you do that determines whether this friendly interaction stays the same or evolves into something more. Once you recognize that a hug is friendly and comfortable, the next step is knowing how to move forward without forcing anything. This is where many men make a critical mistake. They either do too much too quickly, trying to create attraction out of nowhere, or they do too little, assuming the moment doesn't matter. Both approaches lead to the same result. The interaction stays flat and doesn't develop. The right approach is somewhere in between. After a friendly hug, your goal is not to escalate immediately. Your goal is to build connection. You already have comfort, and that is a strong foundation. What you need to add is a bit of energy, a bit of engagement, and a sense that the interaction is becoming more interesting. This starts with your presence. Stay relaxed. Stay confident. Don't treat the hug like something important that just happened. Treat it as part of a natural flow. When you act normal and comfortable, it reinforces the same feeling in her. Then focus on your interaction. Make eye contact a little longer than usual. Keep your tone calm, but slightly more engaging. Introduce a bit of playfulness into the conversation. This doesn't mean trying too hard to be funny. It simply means not being overly serious or predictable. Another important detail is attention. Give her your full attention when she speaks. Listen without interrupting. Respond in a way that shows you're present. These small things create a stronger connection over time, and that connection is what allows attraction to grow. The key here is consistency. One moment does not change everything, but repeated moments do. When she continues to feel comfortable around you, and the interaction becomes more engaging each time, the dynamic naturally shifts. This is how a friendly hug evolves into something more meaningful, not through force, not through pressure, but through steady, natural progression. And once that progression begins, the next type of hug starts to appear. The second type of hug is where things start to shift. This is the firm hug. Unlike the friendly pat hug, this one feels more intentional. It lasts longer, there's more contact, and instead of feeling quick and polite, it feels steady and present. When she hugs you this way, you can feel the difference immediately. Her arms wrap around you with a bit more pressure. She doesn't rush to pull away. And for a moment, it feels like she's actually there with you, not just going through the motion. This kind of hug usually signals comfort and familiarity. She enjoys being around you. She feels safe. She feels relaxed in your presence. And that's important, because comfort is one of the strongest foundations for attraction. When a woman feels at ease around you, she becomes more open, more natural, and more willing to stay in the moment instead of holding back. Now here's where most men make a mistake. They don't know how to handle this shift. Instead of recognizing that the hug has more meaning, they react the same way they would to a friendly hug. They pull away quickly, they break the moment, and they miss the opportunity to reinforce what she just showed. From her perspective, that response feels slightly off, because in that moment, she leaned in a bit more. And you didn't meet her there. That doesn't mean she suddenly loses interest, but it does mean the connection doesn't grow the way it could have. Another important detail is consistency. If this type of hug happens more than once, especially across different interactions, it becomes a clear pattern. She's not just comfortable around you, she's choosing to stay present in that closeness. And that choice matters, because attraction doesn't appear instantly. It builds through repeated moments like this. So when you feel that firmness, when you notice that she's not rushing away, understand that something has shifted, and how you respond to that shift determines what happens next. Once you recognize that a hug is firm and intentional, the most important thing is how you respond in that exact moment. This is where many men lose the opportunity without realizing it. The most common mistake is pulling away too quickly. It usually happens out of habit or uncertainty. The moment feels slightly more intense than expected, and instead of staying in it, they break it early. From their perspective, it feels normal. But from her perspective, it creates a small disconnect, because in that moment, she stayed, and you didn't. The correct response is simple, but it requires awareness. When you feel that the hug is firm and lasts a bit longer, don't rush to end it. Stay for a second longer than you normally would, not in a forced or exaggerated way, but naturally, calmly, without tension. That extra second makes a difference. It shows that you are comfortable in the moment. It shows that you're not reacting out of nervousness. And most importantly, it matches her energy instead of breaking it. After you pull away, pay attention to what happens next. Does she smile? Does she maintain eye contact? Does she stay close instead of stepping back immediately? These small details tell you a lot about how she feels. Another important point is your body language. Stay relaxed. Don't suddenly change your tone or behavior as if something big just happened. Keep the interaction flowing the same way it was before, but with a slightly stronger sense of presence. That consistency reinforces comfort, and comfort allows attraction to grow. What you're doing here is not trying to force anything forward. You're simply holding the moment long enough for it to feel complete. That's what most men miss. They think attraction grows through big actions, but in reality, it grows through small, well-timed responses like this. And when you handle this correctly, the interaction begins to move into a different phase. One where the signals become more obvious and much harder to misread. Now we move into the type of hug where things become much more noticeable. This is the lingering hug. The difference here is not just in how long it lasts, but in how it feels while it's happening. With a lingering hug, she doesn't rush to let go. Her body stays close, her arms remain around you, and there is a brief moment where neither of you immediately pulls away. That pause is important, because in attraction, those small pauses carry meaning. When a woman lingers in a hug, it usually means she is comfortable enough to stay in that moment without feeling the need to create distance. Her body relaxes instead of preparing to pull away, and that relaxation is not random. It's a response to how she feels around you. You might notice that her grip softens slightly instead of tightening or releasing quickly. Her posture feels more natural, less controlled. Sometimes there is a slight shift in breathing or a quiet stillness before the hug ends. All of these are subtle signals, but together they form a clear pattern. She enjoys the closeness. Now here's where many men make a mistake. They panic. they feel that the moment is lasting longer than expected, and instead of staying calm, they pull away too quickly. In doing that, they interrupt something that was naturally building. From her perspective, that creates a small break in the connection, because she stayed, and you didn't. The key here is very simple. When the hug lingers, don't rush. Stay relaxed. Allow the moment to exist without trying to control it or end it prematurely. You don't need to do anything extra. You don't need to escalate or change your behavior. You just need to be present. Because when you are comfortable in that silence, in that closeness, it communicates something very important: confidence. And confidence is what allows the interaction to move forward naturally. At this stage, the signals are no longer subtle. They are becoming clear. And when this type of hug appears consistently, it often leads to the strongest signal of all. The final type of hug is the one that reveals the most. This is the intimate embrace. Unlike the other hugs, this one is not quick, not casual, and not neutral. It feels close, fully connected, and emotionally present. Her body leans into yours, not just slightly, but completely. There is full contact, and instead of maintaining distance, she allows that closeness to happen naturally. You may notice her head resting on your shoulder or sometimes near your neck. Her arms wrap around you more tightly, and instead of pulling away after a few seconds, she stays there. In some cases, her hands move slightly along your back, not in a rushed or random way, but in a slow, relaxed motion. This is not accidental. This type of hug usually signals strong emotional comfort and, in many cases, attraction. Because personal space matters. People don't naturally allow that level of closeness unless they feel safe, connected, and comfortable in that moment. And when someone chooses to stay in that space longer than expected, it tells you that they are not just okay with the closeness, they enjoy it. Now here's something important most men don't realize. In this moment, she is also observing you. She is paying attention to how you respond. Do you stay calm, or do you become awkward? Do you rush to pull away, or do you stay present? Do you match her energy, or do you break it? Your response answers those questions instantly. And that response matters. If you stay relaxed, if you allow the moment to happen without forcing anything, you reinforce the connection. You show that you are comfortable with closeness, and that comfort creates emotional safety. And emotional safety is what allows attraction to deepen. You don't need to do anything complicated here. You don't need to overthink. You simply need to stay present and let the moment unfold naturally. Because at this stage, the signal is clear, and how you handle it determines what happens next. At this point, everything should be clear, not just the 4 types of hugs, but what they actually represent. Because this was never just about hugging. It was about understanding how attraction really shows up in small, everyday moments that most men ignore. A hug might seem simple on the surface, but it carries a lot of information. The way she holds you, how long she stays, how close she allows herself to be. All of these details reflect how she feels in that moment. And once you understand that, you stop treating these moments like nothing. You start paying attention. And that awareness changes everything. But here's the part most men still get wrong. They overthink it. They try to analyze every single detail, looking for certainty instead of understanding patterns. They ask themselves, does this mean she likes me? Or was that just a friendly hug? And in doing that, they miss the bigger picture. Because attraction doesn't work in isolated moments. It works in patterns. If you see one signal, it might not mean much. But when you see consistent behavior over time, when her actions repeatedly show comfort,